Hi there. Well, I want to talk to you today about the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program, or the OOHRP, what we have in our collections, and how we've been involved with one of the bigger projects that PBS will be coming out with this year. But first, let me tell you a little bit about the program. It was founded in 2007 as part of the library and the Center for Oklahoma Studies, and our goal is to document the history of Oklahoma and Oklahoma State University through oral history interviews, and then to make those interviews accessible to the general public. We use digital video cameras and digital audio recorders, and we interview people from all over Oklahoma about their own experiences. Then we transcribe all of that and put it online so that it's word searchable for researchers, and we make it available along with sound files, biographies, photographs, and video excerpts. Now, what's important about oral history? Why do we like it? Well, how many of you had really boring history textbooks, either in college or high school? Yeah, I mean, I liked history, and even I had problems with it. In written versions of history, the contributions and perspectives of many different individuals and groups get left out of the record. And you often only hear about the important people. Well, we think everybody's important. And that's where oral history comes in, because we can fill in historical gaps by interviewing both famous and everyday people about their firsthand experiences, and then making that material available. Also, by teaching students, faculty, and community members how to do oral history interviews and how to use those interviews in their own work, we try to promote the collection and preservation of Oklahoma history. Now, what can you get from oral histories? Well, the first thing to understand is that oral history interviews are based on firsthand accounts. We're not talking about oral tradition, which is interesting, but we're not talking about those stories that are passed down, for example, Thanksgiving stories in families, things that get passed down from generation to generation. We're talking about interviews with people who experienced something firsthand. Second, with oral history, you can get coverage of groups that normally don't get documented. You can get voices of women, rural communities, different ethnic groups. That is, not just business leaders and politicians, although we think they're very important too, but other folks as well, like farmers who are working centennial farms that have been in their families for over 100 years, or people who work with the circuses that winter down in Yugo, Oklahoma every year, or students who attended OSU back when it was still Oklahoma A&M. Now, a great example of a project designed around a group that hadn't yet been documented is the Women of the Dust Bowl project. It was started by one of our associate deans, Jennifer Postenbaugh, Stephen Kite, and Shelley Lemon. In doing research on the Dust Bowl, they found that most of the primary sources that they came across were from the perspective of men. Very little had been said about women's experiences in the Dust Bowl. So they set out to interview women, and when all was said and done, they ended up doing oral histories with almost 150 of them in the northwestern part of Oklahoma, out in the Panhandle near Boise City, for any of you who have been out that way. It's a fantastic collection with wonderful stories, and they're all available online. If you ever have time, take a look, go listen to them. I'll talk about that project more in a minute. But first, I want to just talk a little bit more about why oral history is important. First, you have those multiple perspectives. Think of those 150 women. That's a lot of different viewpoints. And with oral history, it's not just one oral history that makes the difference. Everyone's memory is prone to a little slippage over time. Now, most of you out there are fairly young, so you don't know what I'm talking about yet. Give it another 15 or 20 years, you'll know. But people also understand things differently depending on how they were involved in an event. So while one oral history might not necessarily tell the whole story, a collection of oral histories, like what we have, lets you get all of the voices and perspectives and gives a much fuller version of history than what you'd normally have. In our collection right now, for example, we have interviews with over 600 different people online. With oral histories, you can also get details that you might not get otherwise. You can ask follow-up questions, which is something you can't do with your textbooks, or if you do start asking your textbooks follow-up questions, people will be asking you questions fairly soon. Perhaps most importantly, though, with oral history, you can get analysis. You can ask someone why they did something and get the reasoning behind their decisions and find out what really went on. Now, the staff and faculty at the OOHRP currently include myself, Tanya Fincham, Juliana Nicolasian, who I think is in here someplace, Julie Pearson Little Thunder, and Mickey White, along with our student employees, Miranda Childress and Adam Evans. And we've been working on a number of different projects. I won't take time to talk about them right now, but go to library.okstate.edu/oral history and take a look at our interviews there. And just finally, because all of our interviews are available to the public, they get a lot of use from researchers. Now, I said I'd get back to talking about our Dust Bowl collection. Well, one of the more recent researchers to use our collection for his work was Ken Burns, whose new documentary on the Dust Bowl premieres on PBS on November 18th. He had looked at our materials as part of his background research, and his team ended up interviewing 2 people who had previously been interviewed by our crew. So I'll leave you with this short trailer from his series, which you'll notice uses an oral history voiceover.
There's nowhere you can run. It's as if it follows you, follows you, follows you. You can't escape it. It carried a feeling of almost being